I'm Samantha Mowat. I'm a clairvoyant psychic and a contactee, and you'll have to excuse me with my continuing to plant. I'm really trying to get done as much planting as possible, and of course if you see the table shake, it's because Shadow's hitting the table. He's super excited because I started speaking again. I thought it'd be kind of interesting for me to start sharing part of what it's like to go to school on craft, because I realized a while ago when I was looking up YouTube videos to try to help even develop further my understanding of other people's experiences of school and craft, that there's really not a lot of it being shared out there in the public. I realized that it is a very personal and private thing to go through contact, and for a lot of people it may not be something that they're really comfortable sharing, and that's okay. But I thought it might help other people who were going through this if there were more people talking about this. And so when I was younger, I did start going to school on craft, and it actually made things a little bit different for me, because I remember I would learn one thing in my human school, and then I would learn something totally different when I would go up onto spacecraft, because we would learn about in school like ridiculous things. Like, granted, this was in the 90s and early 2000s, and our textbooks really weren't that up to date back then, but I remember learning that plants didn't really have a lot of feelings and a lot of energy. I remember thinking that was really confusing to me, because I remembered going up into school and craft and seeing the vibration of plants and seeing them emitting almost like a different perspective, like a different energy of their own when we would talk to them or when we would interact with them. I remembered in particular certain things, like this one time I was on school and craft, and granted this was in my 20s, but I'll try to work my way backwards from there. I remember standing at this table, and I'm in a room where there's multiple tables going on, and these tables didn't really have legs like how the table I'm currently using does. It was a little bit different than that, in the sense that it just kind of seemed like it was just kind of there. It was a lower table, like my hips would be like this height, and the table would be like slightly below it type thing. And so the thing I noticed was it was covered with an array of plants, and many of which looked different than the variety of plants we have on Earth. And granted, we have something absolutely phenomenal, like 20 or 40 or 100,000 types of plants on Earth, so you're probably thinking, how could you possibly know all the plants? And I don't. But I do know that the vibration of the plants that I saw whenever I was on craft seemed to be holding a different frequency than a lot of the plants that I've encountered while on this planet, or on my journeys on this planet. And so, ridiculous puppy. And so anyway, Shadow, can you please stop? Thank you. And so what I found was, while I was standing at this table, I had I had another woman at the table with me. There was a man who appeared to be my husband beside me, and there seemed to be about 3 of us at a table, and there were multiple other tables in the room, and our class was being led by a hybrid. And this man, he was interesting because he had like kind of like a thinner red hair. It was more like an orangey red. It was quite a vibrant color, and I noticed that he was a little bit taller than me, so like maybe 5'7", 5'8" type thing, so just a little bit. Hi, sweetie. And while this was happening, he was telling us about the plants and about the vibrational frequencies they have, about their energies, about how they respond to things like being talked to, how if you sing to plants or read to plants, they're paying attention to your auric field, they're really taking in the vibration of the words that are being said to them, and I found this to be quite incredible. And he was also talking to us about the importance of blessing the water that you're giving to them. So, you know, if I were to have this cup full of water and I were to be giving it to the plants, the importance of looking at it, infusing it with love-based energy, healing energy of love, appreciation, gratitude, all sorts of stuff like that was very important for their growth and their development. And so while this was happening, I noticed that one of the women at our table appeared to be in more of a catatonic state. So a catatonic state is when someone's in an altered state of consciousness, very similar to being hypnotized or kind of drugged. And you'll notice that when these people are in this type of state, they don't always have the best of reactions. So you could do something to someone who's in a catatonic state, and they might not necessarily react in their normal state of awareness or consciousness. And so I noticed that this woman was watering the plants that were in front of her. They were emitting this really traumatized and fearful energy. At first, they were releasing the energy of discomfort, and then they started to release the energy of fear, and then they started to release the energy of anxiety and high amounts of stress. And I remember while this was happening, being like, stop watering them, stop doing that. And I was starting to get very, very frustrated with her. And I remember at one point I had started to yell and get like very mad. And you know, when you find yourself in that strong emotional state where you're having stuff like that happen, quite often when the classes are being led by certain beings, you can find that sometimes you'll have like 2 instructors or 1 instructor, really depending upon what's going on and what's being taught and the humans that they have in this class. It really does impact how things are going. But I remember the instructor who was closest to me was this male one, and he came up to the woman and he put his hand on her and he asked her to stop, and I remember it being telepathic, and as he did so, she stopped doing what she was doing. But I remember by that point, I felt very frustrated with her. Like, I strongly did not like this woman because she wasn't responding to the energy that these plants were emitting. She wasn't honoring them, and really, I guess because of the state she was in, she wasn't really conscious and capable of being that cognizant of the impact of her actions. And that was something that really frustrated me. Sorry, I'm just looking around for any of the smaller cups and I seem to be out of them. Darn. But I can plant the big ones. And look at this cute little pumpkin. Isn't he sweet? So excited. But when I found this situation happening, and this is when I was a lot younger, mind you, I found there were other situations where I found myself learning about plants when I went on to craft on school. And this other time, I was on craft and I was learning about the importance of talking to the plants and really learning about how it's important for you to start connecting to them. And when this was happening, I remember coming back after an encounter, and I think I was 20 or 21 at the time, like I was quite young, and I went to my dad's house. My dad has this absolutely gorgeous greenhouse, and I was sitting in there with a book about psychic development because I was trying to figure out what exactly I was being taught about craft, because at the time I was going back and forth between classes to do with psychic abilities, understanding of energy, understanding the nature of reality from an energetic perspective, as well as looking at things from more of a perspective of psychic connection. And psychic energies are a little different than what people are expecting. But I remember knowing about things like telepathy because that is just something everyone that goes on to craft typically experiences, at least if they grew up going on craft. When you're on craft, you typically express communication through thought forms. And it's normally done in like a block of information, not necessarily just like a standard one-word type thing. And so while this was going on, I brought one of my psychic development books, trying to understand what the humanoid beings that I was interacting with were trying to teach me, which was, you know, we go up on craft, and quite often it'd be like smaller classrooms, which was kind of nice, or smaller classes, pardon me. And it was typically only like a few of us, you know, 3 to 4 or 5 to 7, or occasionally something higher like 12, and that was always nice because whenever we had groups like that, it's more individualized attention. It seems like there's not too many energetic fields going around. Oh, that guy's too high. Too many energies going around, so it makes it easier to really understand the energies that are being projected into the air. And so while this was going on, I was also starting to learn about the importance of plants and the vibrations of them. And although I had been living away from home for several years at that point, after I started having this contact on craft where I was learning about the importance of plants, the apartment that I was in, I bought tons of herbs, like a ridiculous amount. It almost looked like we had like this little jungle on our balcony. And the reason why I bring this part up was the plants that I had on my balcony, I was taking some of the aspects I was learning on craft, which was understanding, okay, we talk to our plants, we sing to them, we connect to them, and I started to be able to see their auras. And that really started to change things for me, because when I started to notice the auric field coming around plants, it really started to make things exciting. And part of the reason why I decided to paint most of my walls, and you see in here it's more like a soft gray color, it actually makes it easier to see the auric field of myself, my plants, my animals, and that is just to help to even further accentuate my own clairvoyant abilities on a more relaxed level when you have really bright colored walls, which I kind of learned this the hard way. Like when we first bought this house, I painted a lot of the house like this really vibrant, cheery yellow, and that was awesome because I loved the color and it helped to make them feel great, but it actually made it very hard for me to see the aura of my children. It made it very hard for me to see the aura of my plants and my pets. And so between having that being yellow and our living room being gray and other rooms being blue, it was just too many auric colorings going on, or too many colors going on that were kind of making the auras more faded. And so this was done with the intention of trying to accentuate more of the subtle energies that I've noticed on craft. Quite commonly when I go on there, I find that it's such a peaceful, relaxing energy, and typically it is more of like that whitey color or a greeny color. Shadow, come here. Come. It's more like that soft whitey color or creamy color. And part of the reason behind this, I'm not sure, but it's always well illuminated and it makes me feel safe and it makes me feel very calm. And so that's part of why I chose to go back to more of like a soft, neutral color for my own home, was just to return to that same energetic state of connection. But getting back to school and craft, you know, it can work a little bit differently than what people are expecting, because when I was younger, it was a little more complicated, because sometimes when I would find myself in this group, I would find myself, we'd be sitting quite often, and normally we'd be sitting in like, more of like a table-y kind of section where it seemed like there were a few of us, and we would be looking up into the center of the room. And while we're looking up into the center of the room, it's almost like you're all looking up kind of like partway up into the air. Not quite like you're looking up the ceiling light, but kind of like you're looking at something that's floating like 4 or 5 feet above you type thing, and several feet away. And we'd see the colors blending from like one color into the next. And you know, sometimes that's all they would do, is they would show us like the different colors, and we'd be asked to feel the emotion behind the colors that we felt. And what I didn't realize at the time was this was teaching us how to understand the empathic or clairsentient understanding of the colors. And they kind of, it was kind of weird because sometimes I'd have my eyes closed when I would get home, and I would notice, okay, I feel these auric colors around me. Sometimes I'd feel yellow, sometimes I'd feel purple, blue, whatever. And I would take note to how those colors felt when I was being shown them, because I was looking at things on my third eye level, not my physical eyes. And so when we're on craft, our psychic abilities tend to be amplified and used in a different way than what people are kind of expecting. But because I was having that happen, and it was starting like, and then another time, like I'd be like a month or so would go by, or 2 months, then I'd find myself up on craft again, and I'd see myself with the same people that I saw before, and we'd be learning this time, not only we're kind of refreshed about, okay, well we looked at this stuff last time, but then we'd be looking at different things. We'd be looking at, okay, do you see how this time the blue color appears to be quite faded and kind of transparent, whereas the red looks like it's more solid? And they would start to explain to us how the colors had different impacts depending upon not only, well, the energy had different impacts depending upon not only the colors, but the density of the colors, the vibration of the colors. And this I always thought was quite interesting, because it started to make me not only more aware of the colors that I was wearing, but I would really take note to the type of colors that I felt around people. And you know, you may be wondering like, well, what the heck do you mean? Colors that you feel around people? That doesn't make any sense. But actually, it kind of does, in the sense that when I feel, like when I look at things on a clairvoyant level, and I look at, let's say, red that's around somebody, you'll get an emotional response on an energetic level about how that red feels. You could get the feeling of it being like a passionate, artistic, happy red, or where it's like a cherry red. Whereas if I'm feeling like it's an angry or like intense energy red, it could feel like a Scorsese red. Whereas if it's like more of like, how can I explain this? Like a red leather couch, it could have more of like a lustful type red. So do you see how there's the different kinds of reds having different like energetic kind of like ties to it, or energetic implications? It's kind of like that. And so they'd show us how the different colors blending into each other, how we could better interpret the various layers of energy. And it really did start to change my understanding of things. And part of the reason why they did this was to help me understand the way different energy frequencies and signatures could have overlapping information. For instance, you could meet somebody, whether it's a human or multidimensional or an extraterrestrial, and at first you might get like really intense, loving energy, but then you have to look at what's beyond that initial energetic level. When you break it down from that love vibration, what do you sense next after that? Do you get like a scholarly energy about them? Do you get like a healing energy about them? Do you get like someone who's a protector? And I want you to think of it this way. When you think about the energy being emitted, let's say even just by the love-based beings that work with all of us, whether it's the angels or spirit guides or whatever, if you were to just close your eyes and connect in, and all of a sudden you have like this beautiful love-based energy around you, you can be like, oh, I have a love-based energy around me, it's angels. Because no, that's not always the case, for one. But two, a lot of beings have love-based energy. So once you get that first initial energetic understanding, you have to move on to the deeper level of what's next. For instance, you could get a love-based energy, and then you could get a very protective energy, and then you could get a very psychic energy, and then you could get the energy of something like swords. You'd be like, whoa, this doesn't make sense. I'm confused. I don't understand. Hi, Shadow. But what you might want to take into consideration is all of those energies can still be interconnected, but it's just the different layers coming through. And how this could be interrelated is, let's say all of a sudden I have like this beautiful golden energy coming around me. And then I notice that the gold changes to being like a cobalt blue. And that starts having like bits of like this yellow and gold kind of like mixing together. If you don't really know energies and think to really have like a deeper understanding of who's coming forward, you might not realize that you're talking to Archangel Michael. You might think, oh, well, who the heck is this? I think it's multiple beings. Oh no, I broke this guy off. When in actuality, it's just one. So that is part of how we have to really take this into consideration, because a lot of these energies need to be read on a greater capacity, and they were teaching me not to be so impatient when I'm reading energy. Hi, sweetie. They wanted me to look at all the different aspects of the energies that were coming forward, and as I was doing this deep breathing exercise, because they always emphasized to us the importance of taking deep circular breaths. So what that means is that a lot of humans actually don't breathe properly. They take a lot of shallow breaths. They take a lot of breaths that are not giving them the strength they need. And so because that's happening, it makes it very challenging, because the humans are depriving their cells of the nutrients they need. Okay, I'm just going to move the pumpkins onto this side, so I know these are pumpkins. And then we'll start the watermelon. And so while this was going on and I was going to school on craft, it really started to, because I was having so many encounters with these beings, their vibration shifted mine. I went from being someone who, like, let's say at the age of 14, loved cookies, loved juice. I really enjoyed stuff like chicken wings back then. I really enjoyed eating a lot of processed foods and a lot of the things that teenagers typically enjoy. However, sweetie, there's no room for you up here. However, as I started to go through more school on craft and started to go into the hybrid program and really having that energy coming forward to a greater extent, I noticed a huge shift in my energy and my preferences. Hi. I noticed that I went from being not only someone who really enjoyed, like at 19, I would go to a restaurant and my food that I would tend to order would be a salad, because that's what my body craved. It craved that high nutrient food. 1 second. Could you let him out for me, please? Thanks. I really, it was kind of odd for me as a 19-year-old to go to a restaurant and be someone who just wanted a salad, because that was the food that my body was craving with going to school on craft. It was craving that, more of that natural, higher vibrational food, because that was more aligned with the energy that I was emitting and being drawn to, than say food like chicken wings and beer or pop and stuff like that. And so for me, school on craft really amped up in my early 20s, to the point that I was having a lot of encounters, but I wasn't even necessarily aware that I was always having the encounters. I would often sense beings coming around at night, whether it's feeling the familiar hum of like craft above the house, or feeling as though these beings were talking to me psychically, or having them pop into our home and seeing like these large energy masses coming around in the evening and in the afternoon before I would go to bed. And so with this happening, it shifted a lot for me. And the more I shifted my vibration to being of a higher vibrational frequency and really learning how to bless my food, bless my water, take in the sun's energy and have it absorb into my cells to light them up from the inside, to help open them up to connect to a higher state of being, the happier and healthier I was. I went through a couple years where I didn't really get sick that often because I was in such a higher, healthier vibrational state, which was wonderful. The other thing that I noticed about it was our houseplants were always an indication as to what was going on energetically. When our houseplants were happy, it normally meant that the energy in our home was quite good as well. And so we tend to have a lot of plants all over the place, and it tends to be little indicators as to how everyone's doing. And I thought that was a very important and interesting thing to do. Oops, one sec. I think I'm getting too distracted doing too many things at once, so I'm going to cut this video short here. But it was lovely talking to you, and I'm going to try to get everyone else hopefully planted. I wish you peace and light. Bye!